Hi, this is Ben Frank. Wanted to make a video today about my journey with multiple sclerosis. Um, and I think this is important, not only personally to try to share and help somebody out that might be going through the same thing, but it does tie into politics because there are millions of people living with disabilities and chronic illnesses that do not have adequate representation in Congress. And one very important aspect of a representative democracy is that the people representing a certain community, they come from that community, they represent demographics, and I believe that I can represent people with disabilities, people with chronic illnesses. Long before I had MS, I was working with people with developmental disabilities, and autism was something that I am still very passionate about, but something that I did for a long time before having a disability on my own. Um, my MS story, I'm 29 years old right now. When I was 27, 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And how this happened was I was living my life, and I think living it well. I was getting a promotion with my job. I played the drums and was getting drum students. My bands, I was doing two projects and both were doing fairly well. Um, Things were working out really well. And then, things kind of hit you when you don't expect them to. Um, and multiple sclerosis hit me, and obviously I had no idea that was going to happen. And so how it happened is I developed a headache, which is pretty rare for me. I've never had a migraine or anything like that. And I got a headache on the right side of my head, and I had a correlating eye blur spot that was happening at the same time. And this was happening for like a week, and I didn't really think anything of it. But my loved ones encouraged me to go to a doctor. I remember when I first noticed the blurry vision, I was getting my oil change and I was looking on my phone like migraine plus blurry vision. And they're like, well, if it doesn't go away in a couple hours, you most likely that's a sign of multiple sclerosis. And I was like, what's funny is that I completely disregarded that. I was like, okay, well, it's not that, so I need to find something else that it might be. And then my left hand started going numb, and all these, like, now I know, very clear symptoms. However, at the time, I just thought it was this bizarre anomaly. Eventually went to an Instacare where they told me to go get an MRI, and they were saying things like, well, we want to make sure that you don't have a brain tumor and things like that, and things really got real. The precarious nature of human life, I was able to feel that really strongly. And it was interesting because I was also feeling a lot of defense mechanisms and denial. I still think that there's an element of denial going on at times. So I got the MRI. That evening they said, you probably have multiple sclerosis. I didn't know what that meant. Like, I've heard the term. I knew that Richard Pryor had it. But I didn't know what multiple sclerosis was, like what it actually means. So I Googled it, and I found really relieving information in that the drummer from Billy Talent has it, and it made me feel like there was hope that every video I've seen of him, he seems completely normal. He's a great drummer. I know that he wasn't able to record their last album because of MS reasons, which I have a lot of compassion for. Being pulled away from the drums for any reason is not something I would wish on anybody. So I got diagnosed with MS, and it didn't really hit home. It just seemed like this bizarre thing that I couldn't really comprehend. Later that week, I had a day of where I should have been resting, but again, like what you should do in those situations, and the way your mind reacts are oftentimes different things. So I should have been resting, but I went to work. You know, I'm a hard worker and very dedicated to many things. And again, that time of my life, I was healthier than I had ever been. I was on a basketball winning streak. My last game of basketball probably ever. I had beaten, I was playing against coworkers and patients, and my last shot, this is going to be a humble brag going on. My last shot was draining a three-point shot against a coworker who's much larger and more athletic than I am, and he and I would work out after work, and I was able to lift 200 pounds, which you could probably tell from my muscles that a guy like me lifting 200 pounds is personal accomplishment. And so I went from that to now, like a week later, a few days later, I'm playing drums with a friend, and then I leave, and I'm hanging out with my girlfriend Claire and this friend and his wife, and we're walking back to the car, and I can barely walk back to the car. And my mind was super blurry. Like, it was as if I was like punched in the face or drank too much alcohol or something, just this fuzzy dreamlike state. And they took me to the ER, and I was in the hospital for a month. And my balance was awful. I've never had any mobility issues before that in my life, but I had to use a walker, which I could barely balance enough to use a walker. I've decorated in punk rock stickers, by the way, and I call it the punk walker. I'm really proud of that. I think that's pretty cool. So I'm using this punk walker, and I can't walk across the room without somebody standing behind me and holding onto a gait belt around my waist, because what had happened was my sense of proprioception was shot, and so I couldn't really tell where my legs were going in space and time. Swallowing became really difficult. My memory, I would forget things mid-sentence. And so think about like a couple weeks before that, I was a young, ambitious, successful man with, you know, all the prospects going up, and then I'm in a hospital. Was in the hospital for a month. Relearned to memorize things. Like, had to rework my memory. Had to learn strategies for things like how to get out of bed, how to walk without falling over. And I spent a month in a rehab unit at the hospital with, I was the youngest by far. Everybody was like in their 70s, just had strokes and stuff, it was really bizarre to, go from that young, successful life to now, you know, I didn't have a job at that point because of the MS, could barely walk, things like that. It was terrifying, and it was a major surreal adjustment. I remember when one of the nurses told me that I would get a handicap parking pass forever. I thought that sounded pretty neat, because, like, you know, it's something that I never had before. Not really thinking about the implications of it. It also felt really bizarre. Like, clearly, I could benefit from that and probably need that. But I was just like, you know, it felt like somebody else's life. It's a heavy topic for sure. But since then, I've been able to go back to school. I'm studying psychology at Salt Lake Community College in hopes of becoming either a neuropsychologist or a therapist for at-risk youth. I'm running a congressional campaign, and just working hard every day to keep my independence, keep helping people. This video might have gotten a little ranty, but I hope that it could help somebody. And an issue that any name recognition that I get from this campaign, I would really like the issue of disability awareness to help spread the word about disability, and that people with disabilities and chronic illnesses deserve a lot more credit than they get. We need to fight the stigma. FDR had polio. Stephen Hawking was a great physicist, and working with people with disabilities, specifically developmental disabilities, these people aren't to be ignored. They're not to be looked down on or patronized or anything. These are human beings that just their presence really benefits humanity. And from my personal experience, having a disability and a chronic illness, I can say that it's changed my perspective on a lot of things. Like, it's definitely opened up a whole new world and perspective that I can share with people that have never gone through that hopefully will help open up some compassion and empathy. One of the greatest things that I've gotten from this experience is empathy. That, I am in pain and discomfort and fatigue a lot of the time, but I fight through it. And so it helps me realize the human being I'm looking across from when talking, I don't know what their suffering is. I don't know what their struggles are, and so it can help me maybe be a little bit more patient and understanding. And another wonderful aspect of this journey is gratitude. I think having the experience that I've had has shown me how good people are at the bottom of their heart and how willing they are to help and be there for you. It's just made me feel a lot more connected. And it's also made me feel more grateful for the moments that I'm not experiencing pain, the moments that I can walk normally, the moments that I have enough energy to play the drums, to go to school, things like that. So it's not without its difficulties, to say the least. And that goes not only for myself, but for my family, etc. However, I can say for myself, and hopefully for other people, it has had its special lessons involved, as well as moments of joy. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. Thank you if you've made it to the end of the video. That's really cool. Thanks.